American Factor is an Oscar-winning documentary released on streaming platform Netflix, directed by Julia Richard and Steve Bognar, and was released on January 2015 of 2019. Know that it was produced by former President and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama's production company, Higher Good Production. It follows the workers as well as the chairman of Fuyao Glass America after the 2016 opening of their manufacturing plant in Dayton, Ohio. Fuyao's new factory was once home to GM, but they closed their doors in 2008, putting over 2,000 workers out of a job. The movie starts on a very somber note with a meeting talking about the thousands of people that were without a stable income due to GM closing its doors. It soon turns hopeful as it talks about how chairman of FGA, Cho Di-Wang, bought the old factory and is hiring both Americans and Chinese workers. The people of Dayton are very grateful to again have the opportunity to work a stable job, but it is quite a downgrade from GM's wages of $29 per hour to Fuyao's $12.84 an hour. Fuyao hires Chinese supervisors in the plant to start the factory going and to teach the American workers how to make the glass. You wouldn't think it would be much of a problem between the two types of workers, only a language barrier, but quickly viewers see a very large cultural barrier as well. The Chinese workers have to attend a class which teaches about American culture and their behaviors. A very interesting part was when they were told Americans don't like to find a lot of meaning in things, and they're more straightforward and like to get to the point. Two main narratives are presented in this documentary. One side that shows the positive relationships with the Chinese workers and Americans, and one that shows the negativity between the Chinese and American cultures. American worker Rob is paired with Chinese supervisor Wang, and the two become very close and represent the ideal relationship between the two cultures. Rob learns all about the new glass industry from Wang and starts to sympathize with the Chinese after learning that the Chinese workers have to stay in Dayton for 2 years away from their family in China to work at the new Fuyao factory and teach the Americans. Rob even invites 13 of the Chinese workers to his home for Thanksgiving dinner. He teaches them how to use a gun, which some would say is an American tradition. The Chinese workers were very intrigued by the gun since they aren't allowed to own guns in China. They both are learning from each other's cultures, as you can see, and traditions, and they find a way to effectively work together despite a language barrier. The whole movie goes back and forth, highlighting incredible culture differences that make working seamlessly together difficult. The Chinese social values all contrast from those of the Americans. The workers in China are taught that the efficiency of a team is better than individual success and that working together is the best way to produce the goal of the shift, while the Americans are focused on their own job security and focus on their own work rather than the group as a whole. And the documentary went on to say that the Chinese believe that the Americans are only there for the paycheck and not for the product that they're representing while they're at their job. During the middle half of the documentary, a problem of a union forming comes up in this film. The union threat increases and causes Chairman Cho to fire the two American vice presidents for not effectively shutting down talks of unionizing that were going on around the working environment, causing outrage for some American workers because they do not feel safe and no longer have American people to talk to and voice their concerns, because they believe that they only have these Chinese employees to talk to, and because of that they do not feel safe and they do not feel as if they are listening to their problems. It then makes its employees attend mandatory trainings conducted by the Labor Relations Institute, where they try to persuade their workers against unionizing and explain why it would put their jobs in danger. Many big supporters of the union are later fired, and the vote to unionize comes back with a majority against it. The workers do get a $2 pay increase, but that still puts them struggling trying to pay rent for their houses that they still may not be living in. Some of the American supervisors go to China to visit a Fuyao plant and they face a massive culture shock. They are amazed at how fast and machine-like the Chinese workers are. The Chinese managers ask the Americans about the lack of productivity in the U.S. factory and say that the American workers are not only lazy, but ungrateful. This is due to the fact of the hours that differ in Chinese and Americans. Americans get weekends off and only have to work 8-hour shifts, while the Chinese have a much harder job with only one day off a month while working a 12-hour shift. Americans are also amazed how the Chinese work under such difficult conditions and without the proper protective eye care. Chairman Chow comes in to talk to the Chinese employees and says an important part of their job is to change their perception of the Chinese people and culture. At its heart, despite the culture, language, and political barriers, it's a story about how both the Chinese and Americans understand the same struggle. They may be different in every way, but all the workers at Fuyao just want a better life for themselves and their families. No matter where they come from, each is just trying their best to make ends meet and make a livable wage. Thank you.